Today I'm going to discuss about the very important question answers of gender and politics. So let's go. First question 1a. From which word patriarchy has been derived? The word patriarchy has been derived from the Greek word patriarchis, which means father of rule, which is a compound of patria, means lineage, descent. Pater means father, and arch, which means rule. Next questions. Give definitions of patriarchy. According to Walby, patriarchy is defined as a system of social structures and practices in which men dominate, oppress, and exploit women. Cady Millett defines that. Another feminist supporter, Cady Millett, defines that patriarchal government is an institution where by that half of the which is female is controlled by that which is male. Next, C. Who wrote the novel Mary a Fiction, which was published 1788, and book Vindications of the Rights of Women. These two books was written by the Mary Wollstonecraft. Next question D. Who wrote the book The Feminine Mystique, which was published in 1963? American feminist writer Betty Friedan was written the book The Feminine Mystique. E. Who wrote the book Sexual Politics? Sexual Politics was written by the Cady Millett. F. Who wrote the book The Dialectic of Sex, which was published in 1970? The book The Dialectic of Sex was written by Shulamit Firestone. Next question G. Who wrote the book The Village Voice? Geoffrey Stokes. Who wrote the book The Second Sex, which was published in 1949? The book The Second Sex was written by the Simone de Beauvoir. Who established the Who established the first research center for women's studies in Bombay in SNDT Women's University in 1974? The first research center for women's studies in Bombay in 1974 was established by Neera Desai. Next K. Who wrote the book The Creations of Patriarchy? Girida Lerner. Girida Lerner was the writer of the book The Creations of Patriarchy. Next J. Who wrote the book The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State? The book The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State was written by the Friedrich Engels. From which word feminism has been derived? The word feminism has been derived from the Latin word lemina, which means woman. Who wrote the book on patriarchy? The book on patriarchy was written by Kamala Fashin. Next, to give the support of give the two supporter of radical feminism. The two radical feminism was Kate Millett, Juliet Mitchell, Mary DeLay, and Catherine McNinnon. Next, B. Give two supporter of liberal feminism. Two supporters of liberal feminism are Betty Friedan, Mary Wollstonecraft, Michael Kimmel. Next, 2C. Give two supporters of social feminism. The two supporters of social feminism are Donna Haraway, Evelyn Reed, and Faith Wilding. Next, D. Give two supporters of black feminism. Angela Davis, Bell Hooks, Kimberly Williams, Greenshaw. Next, E. Define gender. According to Anna Oakley, gender refers to the social classifications of men and women into masculine and feminine. It has no biological origin. That the connections between sex and gender are not really natural to all. Then the second feminist supporter who defined the gender, his name is Simone de Beauvoir. According to him, gender differences are manufactured by society which conditions women to conform to a stereotype of feminine behavior, requiring them to be passive and submissive, suited to a life of domestic and family responsibilities. Next, 2F. What do you mean by gender? Gender is a socially constructed identity. It refers to the socially constructed rules and relations between men and women. Also, gender is social and cultural difference between men and women. Gender is not natural. It is learned behavior which is learned from others. Every person learns to behave according to society based on the factual differences. Gender behavior is not normal. It teaches us what kind of behavior is appropriate for boys and girls, which is decided by the society, and it is called the gender socialization, and it present in every society. Also, gender is cultural term. It refers to different rule which the society assigned to men and women. From the above conclusions, we can say that gender is based on classifications of society and culture. Next, 2Z. What do you mean by sex? Sex refers to biological and psychological difference. The term sex is a physical differences between the male and female. The infant is identified as a boy or girl depending his or her sex. It refers to biological factors which distinguish male and woman. Judith Butler says sex is not just an analytical category, it is a normative category also. It stipulated what men and women are ought to be. It formulates rules to regulate the behavior of men and women. So this is about sex. Next 3a. What do you mean by patriarchy? Patriarchy is based on the principle of male dominance in all spheres of society. It comes from the Greek word patriarchos, which means father of a race or chief of race. Patriarchy literally means the rule of father. He rules over the other members of the family, which includes wife, son, and daughter. He is using power to control the other members of the family. There is a power relations in the family. When one person wants something from others, but they cannot deny him, their power may be physical or psychological, and it may influence others directly or indirectly. So, patriarchy means father to control the family. Patriarchy also means subordination of women by men, and the subordination has done through power relations on between men and women in different fields like religions, family, labor, power, etc. There is manifestation of patriarchy. It is a system of domination. It is also a system of rule or totality. So this is about the discussion of patriarchy. Next 3b. Distinguish between sex and gender. Difference between sex and gender. Sex, gender. 1. Sex refers to the biological and psychological differences between men and women. Gender refers to the social and cultural differences between men and women. Sex has two main categories, male and female. Gender has two main categories, masculine and feminine. 3. Sex remains the same regardless of time and culture. Gender rules, expectations may differ across time and culture. 4. Sex is created by the reproduction needs, that is biological features. 4. Gender distinctions are created by social norms. Sex is universal, gender is culture specific. Next 3c. Features of feminism. The features of feminism are discussed below. Feminism is the ideology or theoretical commitment to the liberation movements of women. 2. Feminism refers to political, cultural, and economic movements aimed at establishing greater rights and legal protections for women. It is the belief in the importance of gender equality in validating the idea of gender hierarchy as a socially constructed concept. Although this hierarchy is justified on grounds of natural difference between men and women. 3. Feminism have different types, that are liberal feminism, radical feminism, socialist feminism, black feminism, etc. Feminism works towards equality, not female superiority. Feminism have 4 waves. Next 3d. Public and private sector. Elaborate. The public sphere denotes a conventionally male-dominated, social, communally regulated space outside the home in which men come together to exchange opinions and political views. The private sphere is regarded as the space in which individuals have a certain degree of autonomy and which exists outside of communal regulations. The divisions between the public as a male regulated sphere and the private as a domestic space in which the presiding male regulates has been the object of significant gender critiques, not less because it gave men license to dominate women and children. Many demands by feminist movements, for example, around rape in marriage and the recognition of domestic violence as a crime, were concerned with reducing men's absolute power in the private sphere. Similarly, the demand for votes for women was about promoting women's participation in the public sphere. Above are the discussions about the public and private sphere. Next, 3E, write short notes. Liberal feminism, Marxist or socialist feminist, radical feminist, black feminist. First is liberal feminism. One of the strands of feminism that emerged as a political position named liberal feminism in the 1970s and 1980s, though it has prior antecedents. Liberal feminism centers on equality in the public sphere between women and men to be achieved through legal changes. Its primary aim is to enable equal access for women to education, health provisions, and the workplace. Issues concerned with the private sphere are less focused on here. Liberal feminists have been critiqued for their heteronormative investment and lack of challenge to patriarchy as an institution. The supporters of liberal feminists are Betty Friedan, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Michael Kimmel, and John Stuart Mill, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. About supporter. First, Betty Friedan. Betty Friedan was born in 4 February 1921 and died in February 4, 2006. Was an American feminist writer and activist, a leading figure in the women's movement in the United States. Her 1963 book, The Feminine Mystique, is often credited with sparking the second wave of American feminism in the 20th century. In 1996, Friedan co-founded and was elected the first president of the National Organization for Women, which aimed to bring women into the mainstream of American society, now fully equal partnership with men. Next is Mary Wollstonecraft. She born in 27 April 1759 and died in 10 September 1797, was an English writer, philosopher, and advocate women's rights. Today, Mary is regarded as one of the founding feminist philosophers. Michael Scott Kimmel, he 1951 is an American sociologist specializing in gender studies. He holds the positions of Distinguished Professor of Sociology at Stony Brook University in New York and is the founder and editor of the academic journal Men and Masculinities. Kimmel is spokespersons of the National Organization for Men Against Sexism and a long-time feminist. In 2013, he founded the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities at Stony Brook University, where he is executive director. In 2018, he was publicly accused of sexual harassment. Next, John Stuart Mill. He was born in 1806 and died in 1873. Was a British philosopher, political economist, and civil servant, one of the most influential thinkers in the history of classical liberalism. He contributed widely to social theory, political theory, and political economy. He was one of the greatest liberal thinkers. Next is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. He was born in 1815 and died in 1902. He was an American suffragist, socialist activist, abolitionist, and leading figure of the early women's rights movement. Her declarations of sentiments presented at the Seneca Falls Convention held in 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York, is often credited with initiating the first organized women's rights and women's suffrage movements in the United States. Stanton was president of the National American Women Suffrage Association from 1890 until 1892. Socialist Feminism 2. Prominent in the 1970s. Socialist feminism considers the divisions of societies into hierarchies, classes, and the capitalist system of unequal access to and ownership of resources as the source of women's and other oppressions within patriarchal culture. Achieving equality therefore involves a more equal access to and distributions of resources to women from men and to poorer people from richer people. It contrasts with radical feminism is not promoting separatism from men and with cultural feminism in being more concerned with the economic basis of inequality rather than the cultural patriarchalities that characterize women's positions in a given context. Marxism and Socialist feminism, led by Friedrich Engels in his analysis of gender oppressions. In Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State 1884, he argues that the woman's subordinations, not a result of her biological despotism, be of relations, and that men's efforts to achieve their demands for the control of women, labor, and sexual faculties have gradually solidified and become institutional in the nuclear family. Marxist socialist feminism arises out of the doctrine of Karl Marx. According to Marxist feminists, the oppressions of women is not directly caused by an individual intentionally, but rather by the social, political, and economic status within which the individual lives. A person's identity is based upon productions. We are what we because of what we produce. The Marxist socialist feminist states that women are required to travel work both within and outside home. These trivializations of women's work. Many Marxist feminists have raised their voice for paying women for housework. As Marxist social feminists become less interested sexual division, the household and more into in workplace politics, the idea of equal pay for equal work came to the forefront. Marxist socialist feminists like to challenge the ideology of capitalism and patriarchy. These feminists are of view that the way to end oppression is to put into classes and gender. Marxist socialist feminists look at the patriarchy in workplace. They say that eliminations of oppressions in workplace will automatically banish patriarchy from the family. Criticisms of Marxist socialist feminists. Marxist socialist feminists that propose for paying to women who do domestic work. This will endanger the relations between men and women. Marriage will then no more secure. It would be likely employ getting a permanent paid. The relations of love, joys, sorrows between men and women would be undervalued. To Marxist socialist feminism theory has stressed too much on economic factors. It has failed to take other factors like human attitude, social and political issues, etc. into account. Marxist socialist feminist says that elimination of discriminating within workplace will abolish patriarchy, but this assumption is simply a myth. Next is postmodern feminism. Postmodern feminism is a new stage in feminism developed in 1980s. It incorporates postmodern and post-structuralist theory and thus sees itself as moving beyond the modernist opposite of liberal feminism and radical feminism. Since 1980s, PMF still one of the most dynamic and central area of intellectual growth within feminism. Postmodern feminism have built on the idea of focal behavior as well as Derrida. The postmodern feminists accept male and female and the main categorizing force in our society. Following Simone de Beauvoir, the see female as having been cast into the role of the other. They criticize the structure of the society and the dominant order, especially in its patriarchal aspects. The main concern of postmodern feminism is differences among women. The postmodern feminism is derived from radical and socialist feminism. The postmodern feminists re-evaluate and extend the issues taken up by second wave of feminism. They also critically reassess them and concepts of second wave of feminism. Postmodern feminism is the ultimate acceptor of diversity. Multiple truths, multiple rules, multiple realities are part of its focus. They don't take up women as a general category but focuses on the factual and theoretical implications of differences among women, the difference not biological but those that resulted from the unequal distributions of socially produced goods and services on the basis of position. in global system, caste, class, ethnicity, religion as an affectional preference. These factors interact with gender stratification. The PMF, Postmodern Feminism, is have realized no amount of academic questioning of gender differences and oppressions bring out unequal pain suffered by different groups unless we touch the grassroots level of differences. Every discussions of women remain academic exercise. The pain that women undergoes differs between one's individual life and other dimensions of stratification. Hence, several studies have come up with topics like gender and race, gender and global locations, gender and caste. These studies show an strictly inter-woman system of caste, class, race, gender and global expressions and privileges. Next, 5b. Discuss the history of women movement in India. The term women's movement does not refer to single unified movement or entity. It is made several movements raised in wide range of issues. Women movement is a term used in recognition of the fact that these movements are working in some way or the towards the emancipation of women. Women's movement can be termed as a collective and conscious movement that tries to deal with a set of powers and needs specific to women. Women's movement in India began a social reform movement in the 19th century. The Western ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity were being imbibed by the educated elite through the study of English. Western liberalism. The Dome extent raised the issue of women's emancipation. The 19th century women found themselves totally subjugated by the male patriarchal ideologies and attitude of those times. Through there was a feminism, identity consciousness, and awareness of their plight. However, this awareness did not get translated into an open and organized struggle. The women movement in India can be seen as forming their waves. The first wave can be seen during the national movement. The second wave can be seen on the late 1960s onwards with the resurgence of women's political activity. In the late 1970s, the third wave emerged which emphasized on women's empowerment. The first wave of women's movement in India. The reading of texts, religious, political, cultural, social, and oral stories, mythology, etc. revealed that women's subordination was there in different forms from times immemorial. Of course, there have been acts of resistance of different times throughout Indian history. There are numerous instances of how women questioned the established norms of society, like Rani Lakshmibai, Raja Sultan, and so on. Many women belonging to various castes joined the Bhakti movement, which emphasized on equal rights of men and women. It resulted in some amount of social reform of women. Gradually, with the growth of education, Indian culture became accessible to women also. There are two distinct groups of progressive movements aimed at the emancipation of Indian women. Both the groups recognize the restrictive and coercive nature of social customs and institutions. One group opposed the customs and the institutions as they contradicted the democratic principles of liberty and freedom. This group was known as reformers. Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Maharishi and Karva, etc. were some of the important reformists. Another group was known as retrievalists, who demand the democratization of social relations and removal of harmful practices on the basis of Vedic society in modern India. As a result of social reform movement, a number of institutions and organizations were established. Some of the important institutions are Ramakrishna Mission, Arya Samaj, All India Women's Conference, SNDT Women's University, the Seva Sadan, etc. Women in Indian national movement played a very important role. Before Gandhi, two prominent women, Vice Annie Besant and Sarojini Naidu, encouraged women to participate in freedom struggle movement. In 1930, when M.K. Gandhi launched civil disobedience movement, women participated in this movement in large number. After the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, the consciousness of 1919, the women increased this injures more and more women to join the national movement. One of the greatest contributions of Gandhiji to women's movement is insistence on their participation in politics. The women accordingly participated NCM 1920, CDM 1930 in large numbers. Next, the second wave of women's movement in India. There is a distinction between the pre-independence and post-independence women's movement in India. The former is essentially about social reform which are initiated by men, whereas the latter was spearheaded by women for their rights. After India gained independence in 1947, government tried to fulfill some of the promises it had made to women during the pre-independence period. For this reason, while framing laws, it included a very important aspect of equality of men and women in all spheres of life. The fundamental rights enshrined in Part 3 of the Constitutions of India emphasize inequality of both sexes. In the decades of 1950s and 1960s, there was a huge activities of feminist and women's movement in India. Women started to realize that the constitutional promise of equality did not by itself resolve equality quotient. By the time women's movement stopped into the 1970s, minority identities began to harden. This divisive milieu greatly affected women. Religious fundamentalists tried to place the onus of preserving religio-cultural identity on women. This identity syndrome with women, the center diverted the attention from actual Islamic positions. Having been a secular movement, the women's movement found itself in a difficult position. The formation of self-employed women's association, Seva, probably was the one-state attempt made to. It was formed at the initiative of Ila Bhatt to law into the issue of low earnings, extremely poor working conditions. Women started participating in increasing numbers in Naxalbari movement and Naxalite movement. Third wave of women's movement or contemporary women's movement. There are different thoughts and activism that come together to create the contemporary women's movement in India. This movement started with the declarations of United Nations Year of Women in 1978. This year also witnessed the release of the Status of Women Committee report. This report revealed that majority of the Indian women suffered from illiteracy, poverty, ill health both in domestic and public sphere. This resulted in exhalations and campaigns against patriarchy. With the declarations of national emergency in 1975, women's movement suffered a setback. When the emergency was lifted in 1977, women's groups were formed in different parts of the country. The 80s witnessed the transformations of women's movement organization as they shifted their focus from one or two issues to holistic issue. There are three streams of feminist orientation. The liberal stream focuses on demanding reforms on those aspects of the polity which specially affected women. The leftist stream focuses on operations of women within holistic analysis of general structure of operations and call for a coming together of specific movement for social change. The radical feminists concentrate defining the development of femininity and masculinity in society as fundamental polarity and experimented with reclaiming traditional source of women's strength, creativity, etc. So this is about the feminist movement in India. Now we discuss about the short notes, women and state and violence against women. For violence against women, also known as gender-based violence and sexual and gender-based violence, SGBW. Violence against women are violent acts the victims of which primarily or exclusively women or girls. Such violence is often considered a form of hate crime committed against women or girls specifically because they are female and can take many forms. The Elimination of Violence Against Women Day, elaborated on 25 November. The United Nations Declarations on the Elimination of Violence Against Women states, violence against women is a manifestation of historically unequal power relations between men and women. And violence against women is one of the crucial social mechanisms by which women are forced into a subordinate positions compared with men. Violence against women can classified into two categories. This includes violence carried out by individuals as well as states. Some of the forms of violence perpetrated by individuals are rape, domestic violence, sexual harassment, acid throwing, female feticide, reproductive coercion, dowry violence, forced marriage, etc. There are forms of violence which may be perpetrated or condoned by the government, such as war rape, sexual violence and sexual slavery during conflict, for sterilizations, forced abortions, violence by the police and authoritative personnel, stoning and flogging. Many forms of VAW, violence against women, such as trafficking in women and forced prostitution, are often perpetrated by organized criminal networks. Historically, there have been forms of organized WFE, such as the witch trials in early modern period or the sexual slavery of the comfort women. So this is about the violence against women.